King Laius of Thebes was married to his distant cousin Jocasta. During their reign, Apollo's oracle at Delphi began to play a leading part in their family's fortunes. Apollo was the god of truth. Whatever the priestess at Delphi said would infallibly come to pass. To attempt to act in such a way that the prophecy would be made void was as futile as to set oneself against the decrees of fate. Nevertheless, when the oracle warned Laius that he would die at the hands of his own son, he determined that this should never happen. When the child was born, he bound its feet together and had it exposed on a lonely mountain where it must soon die. His folly was not brought home to him. He was killed indeed, but he thought this man who attacked him was a stranger. He never knew in his death that he had proved Apollo's truth. When he died, he was away from home, and many years had passed since the baby had been left on the mountain. It was reported that a band of robbers had slain him together with his attendants, all except one who brought the news home. The matter was not carefully investigated because Thebes was in some trouble at that time. The country around was beset by a frightful monster, the Sphinx, a creature shaped like a winged lion, but with the breast and the face of a woman. She lay in wait for wayfarers along the road, and whomever she seized, she would put a riddle to them and promise them if they could answer it, they could go free. No one could, and she devoured man after man. The city was in a state of siege. The 7 great gates, which were the pride of Thebes, remained closed, and famine drew near to the citizens. So matters stood when there came into this stricken country a stranger, a man of great courage and great intelligence, whose name was Oedipus. He had left his home, Corinth, where he was said to be the son of the king Oedipus, and the reason for his self-exile was another Delphic oracle. Apollo had declared that he was fated to kill his father. He too, like Laius, thought to make it impossible for the oracle to come true, so he resolved never to see Oedipus again. In his lonely wanderings he came into the country around Thebes, and he heard what was happening there. He was a homeless, friendless man to whom life meant little. He determined to seek out the Sphinx and to try to solve the riddle. "What creature," the Sphinx asked him, "goes on 4 feet in the morning, 2 at noonday, and 3 in the evening?" "Man," answered Oedipus. "In childhood he creeps on hands and feet. In manhood he walks erect. In old age he helps himself with a staff." It was the right answer. The Sphinx, inexplicably but most fortunately, killed herself. The Thebans were saved. Oedipus gained all and more than he had left behind him. The grateful citizens made him king, and he married the dead king's wife, Jocasta. For many years they lived together happily. It seemed that in this case Apollo's words had been proven to be false. But when their 2 sons had grown to manhood, Thebes was visited by a terrible plague. A blight fell upon everything. Not only were men dying throughout the country, the flocks and herds and fruits of the field were blighted as well. Those who were spared death by the disease died by famine. No one suffered more than Oedipus. He regarded himself as the father of the whole state. The people were his children. The misery of each one was his own. He dispatched Jocasta's brother, Creon, to Delphi to implore for the gods' help. Creon returned with good news. Apollo had declared that the plague would be stayed upon one condition. Whoever had murdered King Laius must be punished. Oedipus was enormously relieved. Surely the men or the man could be found, even after all these years, and they would know well how to punish him. He proclaimed to the people who had gathered to hear the message, "Let no one of the land give shelter to him. Bar him from your homes as one defiled, companioned by pollution. Solemnly I pray, may he who killed wear out his life in evil, being evil." Oedipus took the matter into his own hands with energy. He sent for the old blind prophet, the most revered of Thebes. Had he any means of finding out who the guilty party was? To his amazement and indignation, the seer at first refused to answer. "For the love of God," Oedipus implored him, "if you have knowledge." Fools, the prophet said. Fools, all of you. I will not answer. But when Oedipus went so far as to accuse him of keeping silence because he himself had taken part in the murder, the prophet in his turn was angered, and his words he had meant never to speak fell heavily from his lips. You yourself are the murderer you seek. To Oedipus, the old man's mind must be wandering. He had to be mad. He ordered him out of his sight, and never again to appear before him. Jocasta, too, treated this assertion with scorn. Neither prophet nor oracles have any knowledge, she said. She told her husband how the priestess at Delphi had prophesied that Laius should die at the hand of his own son, and how he and she had seen to it that this should not happen by having their child killed. And Laius was murdered by robbers, where 3 roads meet on the road to Delphi, she concluded triumphantly. Oedipus gave her a strange look. When did this happen? He asked slowly. Just before you came to Thebes, she said. How many were with him? Oedipus asked. They were 5 in all, Jocasta spoke quickly. All were killed but one. I must see that man, he told her. Send for him. I will, she said, at once. But I have a right to know what is in your mind. You shall know all that I know, he answered. I went to Delphi just before I came here, because a man had flung it in my face that I was not the son of Polybus. I went to see the god. He did not answer me, but he told me horrible things, that I would kill my father, and I would marry my mother, and I would have children that men would shudder to look upon. I never went back to Corinth. On my way from Delphi, at a place where the roads met, I came upon a man with 4 attendants. He tried to force me from the path. He struck me with his stick. Angered, I fell upon them, and I killed them. Could it be that the leader was Laius? The one man left alive brought back a tale of robbers, Jocasta said. Laius was killed by robbers, not by his son, the poor innocent who died on the mountainside. As they talked, a further proof seemed to be given them that Apollo could speak falsely. A messenger came from Corinth to announce to Oedipus the death of Polybus. "O oracle of the god," Jocasta cried, "where are you now? The man died, but not by his son's hand." The messenger smiled wisely. "Did the fear of killing your father drive you from Corinth?" he asked. "Ah, king, you were in error. You never had reason to fear, for you were not the son of Polybus. He brought you up as though you were, but he took you from my hands." "Where did you find me?" Oedipus asked. "Who were my father and mother?" "I know nothing of them," the messenger said. "A wandering shepherd gave you to me, a servant of Laius." Jocasta turned white. A look of horror was on her face. "Why waste a thought about what such a fellow says? Nothing he says can matter." She spoke hurriedly, yet fiercely. Oedipus could not understand her. "My birth does not matter?" he asked. "For God's sake, go no further," she said. "My misery is enough." She broke away and rushed off into the palace. At that moment an old man entered. He and the messenger eyed each other curiously. "The very man, O king," the messenger cried. "The shepherd who gave you to me." "And you?" Oedipus asked the other. "Do you know him as he knows you?" The old man did not answer, but the messenger insisted. "You must remember. You gave me a little child you had found. And the king here, he is that child." "Curse you," the other muttered. "Hold your tongue." "What?" Oedipus said angrily. "You would conspire with him to hide from me what I desire to know? There are ways for me to make you speak." The old man wailed. "Oh, do not hurt me. I did give him the child, but do not ask more, master, for the love of God. If I have to order you a second time to tell me where you got him, you are lost," Oedipus said. "Ask your lady," the old man cried. "She can tell you best." "She gave him to you?" asked Oedipus. Yes, oh yes, the other groaned. I was to kill the child. There was a prophecy. A prophecy, Oedipus repeated. That he should kill his father? Yes, the old man cried. A cry of agony came from the king. At last he understood. He had murdered his father. He had married his father's wife, his own mother. There was no help for him, for her, or for their children. All were cursed. Within the palace, Oedipus wildly sought for his wife that was his mother. He found her in her chamber. She was dead. When the truth broke upon her, she had killed herself. Standing beside her, he too turned his hand against himself, but not to end his life. He changed his light to darkness. He put out his eyes. The black world of blindness was a refuge. Better to be there than to see with strange, shamed eyes the old world that had been so bright.